I'm glad you mentioned values, because this seems to be at the absolute heart of so much of what we discuss on this program every week, and what I know a lot of people out there are concerned about. This past week, Kemi Badenoch was talking about values in a multicultural, high migration society, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, because she suggested that actually, and who knew this was controversial, all cultures are not equal. Can we have a little look at what...
Let's have a listen to Kemi Badenoch, one of the Tory party leaders. Potential.
Now, you've written this morning about immigration, and you write that we cannot assume that all cultures are equally valid. So which cultures, in your view, are less valid than others?
Oh, lots. Cultures that believe in child marriage, for instance, or that women don't have equal rights. I actually think it's extraordinary that people think that's an unusual or controversial thing to say. Of course, not all cultures are equally valid.
So, Liz Truss, I want to ask you, should countries like Britain and also Australia, where we've also seen a large contingent of people who don't seem to subscribe to Western values and are supporting, Hezbollah and people like that, do countries need to be more selective about the cultures that they bring in to join their families?
Yes. Yes. and not
easy.
Not
a straight answer.
Bang. Not all cultures are equal, obviously. I mean, who here would want to go and live in Iran or Afghanistan or be a woman in one of those countries? Of course you wouldn't want to do that, because we live in societies that value freedom, that value things like property rights, that believe in equality, equal treatment for all people. That is what we believe in. And not only should we be more selective about who comes into our country, we also need to crack down on people trying to run alternative societies within our country. I'm very concerned about Sharia law and how that is essentially being licensed and overlooked. I mean, we had an absolutely disgraceful statement recently by a police chief in Britain who admitted that rather than dealing directly with people, he was dealing with community leaders, and they were telling him where he ought to police. And I think that is appalling. That is not what we believe in the United Kingdom and in Australia. We believe everybody should be treated equally before the law. And our values have made the world great. Why do so many people want to come to Britain? Why do they want to come to Australia? Because we are successful countries. And what I fear is that the sort of hatred of Western civilization that has unfortunately become part of what the left believes in is undermining our society from within.
But we've seen that happen in the UK under consecutive Tory governments, this two-tier policing, two-tier justice system, the grooming scandal where thousands of girls were systematically abused and authorities were too scared to do anything because of PC considerations, all under a Tory government. So why do we have Conservatives so often, particularly in the UK, be elected, particularly Boris Johnson with that massive majority, and then govern like he's a member of the Labour Party?
Well, the problem is in Britain is our institutions have been taken over by the left. Whether it's the civil service, whether it's the Bank of England, who believe in Keynesianism, whether it is the Migration Advisory Committee, the Climate Change Committee, all of these organisations now have a leftist worldview. And our failure as Conservatives was not to deal with those organisations, because if you allow this whole concept of independence, it could often mean independence from any accountability to the public or any accountability to people that are actually elected. And we should have dealt with that. We didn't deal with that. And that is why we ended up, after 14 years of Conservative government, having record immigration, the highest taxes for 70 years, and the government spending 45% of GDP. So let that be a lesson to everybody. Unless you fix the structures, unless you're prepared to repeal laws like Tony Blair's Human Rights Act, Tony Blair's Climate Change Act, Tony Blair's Equality Act, I think actually that was Gordon Brown, but unless you're prepared to repeal those things, you end up in a straitjacket set by the left. And that was what happened.
Why wasn't this scorched earth policy adopted at some point, where you see the bureaucracy is the problem, it's obstructing any change you want to make? Why can't you, if you're in power, make some drastic changes and put your people in positions?
Well, personally for me, so I was first elected in 2010, which is when the Conservative government got in. And it took me a while to realise just how bad it was. I was a minister for 10 years, and I always thought, well, I'm relatively junior. I'm sure there's somebody else further up in the hierarchy directing this. And then when I got to the top, as Prime Minister, I realised that actually there was an awful lot of power the Prime Minister didn't have, and it was held in organisations like the Bank of England or the Climate Change Committee, and there was precious little I could do at that time to change it. And in fact, what I found was when I pursued policies like cutting taxes, getting on with fracking, I was undermined by that establishment. But I think it was partly...
Undermined deliberately?
Well, they certainly sought to blame me for their mistakes. So if you look at what happened in the gilt market, the Bank of England admitted that 2/3 of the market volatility was down to them. And yet they managed to blame me, and the mainstream media went along with that. So,
I'm really sorry, Liz. We've got to break in there. That's the live television for us. We've got to break it there. Thank you so much, Liz Truss. Read her book, 10 Years to Save the West, because that's what we've got, and it's all there. I urge people to go out and buy it. Liz Truss, former UK Prime Minister. So great to have you here at CPAC, and great to hear from you. Thank you so much. Give her a big hand.